You're welcome. So we will start our fifth day of our school today, and the presentations will be in English. Two of them will be in English today. Usually we mixed languages, as you know, it's Russian and English. Today, as I see, both are in English. It's going pretty well, I should say, our school, and I'm getting some feedback from also our participants that it's very interesting and people are learning a lot, especially about the process of ratification of the Istanbul Convention. That is, today is the crucial day, and we're very glad to have Lela Akiashvili-Tsaizer. Is this correct, the last name? I hope it is.
It is.
So, who will be speaking about very important topic, about the government, politics and the ratification and the implementation of the Istanbul Convention, because this is one issue, one question that all of us are interested in other countries, and we want to learn more how the process went and how what were the government policies and politics in general, so we can share in the future, hopefully, with our government representatives, so the convention can be adopted eventually. So please, Lela, you can talk how much you want, and then we will ask questions, because I'm sure we will have a lot of questions about this topic. And thank you for joining, everyone. And thank you, Lela, for this interesting title, and I'm sure very interesting presentation.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. And I would like to start by thanking you for giving this opportunity to speak to the distinguished members of the family. I think, starting from the title, I think it's amazing. The title itself and the initiative is very important. As already mentioned, I'm Lela Akiashvili, advisor to the Prime Minister of Georgia on human rights and gender equality. I was appointed on this post in November 2019, so almost a year ago. While I came in the post, so to say, ratification process, already in the implementation process, today I will still be sharing the process of Istanbul Convention ratification and the realities that it has created in Georgia as a result. However, prior to moving to this, jumping into presentation and sharing my slides, I know that this week Georgia was already kind of substantially covered through the presentations of different speakers. So, and also I would like to meet the participants of the school. So may I ask for, maybe you have done it already, but may I kindly ask for the introduction round? And also just to mention, if you could mention one or two key takeaways about Georgia, and if there are any gaps still remaining, like if you would like to expand your understanding of a particular subject, that would be very much appreciated. Can we do that?
I guess we can. Yeah, we can do that. I can start. I'm Gohar from Women's Resource Center from Armenia. And I'm also from Yerevan State University Center for Gender and Leadership Studies. So I have been involved in the gender issues, women's rights issues for the past 15 and more years, I should say. And for me, it's really important. Unfortunately, I wasn't present at all presentations because of the situation in Armenia. It's really hard to focus and to do in parallel with humanitarian crisis and other type of like really devastating situation that we're in. But for me, I think the most important, that I don't know, it's gap or just, you know, more of knowledge that I would like to have about governmental policies, really. Like what should they do in order to speed up the process and in order to mitigate this impact from anti-gender movements as well, that specifically targeting the Istanbul Convention. Thank you. Who want to continue? I'm moderating today, so I'm taking some liberty to arrange things. Maybe Lika do want to continue?
I'm Lika Nadaraya. I'm a Georgian expert who works in international body, CEDAW, and right now I'm representative of Eastern Europe in Bureau and vice chair for Eastern Europe, and I'm very much interested in pushing this topic in our countries, because rate of violence against women in Eastern European countries is above average, and we need to strengthen measures in addressing this. This is my sort of regional and international representation. But also I am activist from Georgia who was in feminist movement from the beginning of the process. And I think that my power is knowing civil society and their needs and their limitations. And I am sort of trying to facilitate the process of cooperation between our countries, because it's very important for such topics, especially as adopting regional norms, adopting policies toward anti-gender movements and human rights violations. And as an activist, I'm with full heart here and now with you. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just very briefly like to comment from my side that Ms. Lika is a legendary activist in Georgia and legendary person. So we do have her. She is a legend over here. I don't know if you're well aware. So thank you very much for the opportunity to have you in the discussion.
And you can speak in Russian too, by the way. Whoever wants to present themselves in Russian, please feel free. In my Zoom next is Marta, so I'm just going the way I see people. Marta, if you... Yeah.
Thank you, Gohar. I'm Marta Chumalo from Ukraine, from Lviv. I represent Women's Feminist Organization Center Women's Perspectives. And my interesting for your speech is, for me, it's really interesting to understand how in your country, where church doesn't separate from state, you ratified Istanbul Convention. How it happened, how it was, and after ratification, what is the main challenges from this side, especially for government and for state?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marta. And Marta is the leading organization for this online school, by the way, this year. So, Oksana, can I ask you to present yourself? We can't hear you.
Здравствуйте всем. Меня слышно?
Да, слышно.
Да? К сожалению, к моему сожалению, я не понимаю английского языка, и поэтому...
Мы просто представляемся. Сейчас Lela задала вопрос, какие есть, как бы, ну, что бы вы еще хотели услышать из ее презентации и больше по процессу ратификации, может быть, конвенции, о котором она будет говорить. Что вам именно будет интересно в данной презентации?
Ну, не знаю. Вся информация, которую вы нам оповещаете, она вся интересная. В принципе, нахожу много нового для себя, потому что я новый человек в этой области. А если мне представиться, как там уже написано, меня зовут Оксана Кучурка, я с Молдавии и представляю представителей Ассоциации женщин в полиции. Вот.
Спасибо.
Пожалуйста. Очень приятно вас слышать.
Спасибо. Марта, я не знаю, кто из вашей организации, еще видно два как бы окна, ваше лого, но я не знаю, это вы или это другие коллеги подключены, нет имен просто. Если есть люди
Дело в том, что я в Киеве, я тоже не знаю, кто там во Львове.
Если кто во Львове за этими лого спрятался, пожалуйста,
включите микрофон. И представьтесь, пожалуйста, если кто там есть.
Ага, кто-то есть.
Да, добрый день. Меня зовут Ирина. Я представляю тоже женские перспективы, Центр женские перспективы вместе с Мартой. Вот. Я сейчас, да, во Львове. Ну, каких-то особых запросов у меня нет, мне просто интересно послушать в целом о ратификации Стамбульского конвенции, о процессе, как это все произошло, как Марта сказала, как так случилось. Вот, и ну, с радостью тут послушать.
Спасибо, Ирина. Еще кто-то есть, я просто тоже опять-таки не вижу, не знаю, если кто есть там.
Добрый день.
Добрый день, Анастасия.
Меня зовут Анастасия Кириченко, я из Херсона, общественная организация «Живая». Мне вот было бы интересно тоже послушать и понять, почему некоторые страны, например, балканские, уже ратифицировали Стамбульскую конвенцию, а у Украины есть достаточно прогрессивные законы и сильное лобби, но тем не менее почему-то до сих пор есть какие-то препятствия, которые, конечно, мы знаем какие, но вот, может быть, как ваш опыт подскажет нам сделать какие-то выводы, как-то изменить, может, стратегию. Спасибо.
Спасибо. Кэти, может быть, вы представитесь? Maybe Katie can't hear us. I don't know. Yulia?
Go ahead.
Yes, Katie. Yeah.
Good morning to everyone. I'm Katie Ketevan-Kutshalia and represent of Georgia. I'm coordinator of the project and one of the organizers of this school. And I'm very happy with our speaker, and we will have a very good, we will receive a very good information. What is government doing for us, and for implementation of Istanbul Convention. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Yulia?
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, it's good to see you. My name is Yulia. I'm from Lviv, from Women's Perspectives, the organization. And I'm looking forward to the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Paula. I don't know who is here. It shows Mariam also and Svetlana joined. Maybe you can also present yourself and we will start already. And just to say a few words about your expectations from this presentation. Please, whoever is here, because I'm not sure since videos are off, I don't know if you're here. Maybe we can, oh, okay. Yes, Paula.
Hi,
yes.
sorry,
Yes.
I didn't know we have to introduce ourselves. So, I'm Paula. I'm actually from Romania. I've been living in the UK for the past 6 years. I came across the event on Facebook and I was really, really interested to find out a bit more and expand my knowledge. I've been a feminist activist for a year here in UK, trying to raise a bit more awareness about International Women's Day and domestic violence against women. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you. And okay, Mariam and Svetlana, if you would like to say a few words, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is
Hello.
Mariam. I'm from Georgia, and I'm a representative of HERA 21. I'm social worker in this organization, and I believe that every gender and every sex must have equal rights. And I'm also a feminist, and I would like to listen your presentations, and I'm looking forward to. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Maybe we can start, Lela, and then if there are questions, people can introduce themselves again, those that are joining, because I see more people are joining. I think it's better to start already. And if there are questions, you can write them in the chat box, and I will read them to Lela later. If you have really urgent question, you can probably raise your hand and ask question even in the middle of the presentation. I'm sure Lela wouldn't mind, but usually we ask questions after the presentation. So please write it down or just remember your question. Thank you, everyone, and we can start now.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for these presentations. It is important to know your background so that we can better and more substantively talk about the issue. I will be having my presentation in English, but if you don't, if anybody would need some support at any point, please interrupt, ask questions, and I'll reiterate the same message in Russian as well. So as Marta mentioned, the Istanbul ratification of the ratification of Istanbul Convention and the whole, I would say, approach of protecting women from of the whole approach of combating violence against women and domestic violence is quite complex and multidimensional issue in Georgia. So in order to present the whole picture, I think it's very important to address some other aspects of the country's development and of where we stand right now. So with your permission, I will start from the very beginning. But first of all, let's look at the most, so to say, the fundamental framework of the equality, promoting equality in the country. So, of course, we have the Constitution. The Constitution, the very first part of the Constitution ensures to secure universally recognized human rights and freedoms. And that's where we kind of like have the first appearance of human rights in the Constitution. And then we have so-called famous Article 11 that ensures that all persons are equal before the law. And also since 2017, includes we call it clause on equal opportunity. So clause on gender equality. So this is the state shall provide equal rights and opportunities for men and women. And the same attitude is being expressed in institutions in regards to the persons with disabilities, stating that the state shall create special conditions for persons with disabilities to exercise their rights and interests. So this is like the highest level framework that creates that establishes the foundation or the baseline for all the equality related works that's going on in the country. But give me very briefly, I would like to bring you back to the history and go back to the very first constitution and where it all started from in Georgia. My Georgian colleagues are, I'm sure, well aware of it, but for us, it's very important when we speak about human rights. And I mean, as you know, I'm human rights and gender equality advisor. For us, it's always very important to see where did we start from. So on May 26, 1918, the Democratic Republic of Georgia, we can say, was kind of established. And this is where we associate our human rights, the beginning of human rights protection in Georgia. The same year and within the same year and under the same process, the Act of Independence of Georgia was adopted. And for us, historic document, because back in 1918, the Act was already promoting gender equality. Namely, it was promoting the Democratic Republic of Georgia. It was ensuring the Democratic Republic of Georgia equally guarantees to everyone, every citizen within her limits, rights irrespective of nationality, creed, social rank, or sex. So for 1918, this was very modern and very revolutionary statement back in the day. Moreover, under the same document, women also gained passive and active voting rights. So the same document established that all the citizens of both sex, 19 years old or older, can equally participate in elections as candidates. So this is where we say the gender equality movement starts in the country, because we can say that back in 1918, the first creators or the founding fathers of the first Democratic Republic of Georgia already understood and realized the importance of gender equality. And not only did they understand it, they have enshrined it in one of the most important documents of the country. So this is kind of like we call it the proud part of the history. But very briefly, in one slide, in buzz, I will tell you about what was before 1918 in one buzzwords. So in Georgia, we have certain, like we say that we already have some kind of societies working and living together since 13th century BC. I'm sure you have all heard of Colchis and Iberia. I will not talk much about that. As for Christianity, and we will be talking about religion soon, we had two tries of Christianity to be introduced in the country. Before it was Zoroastrian, and then in first attempt was in 1st century, preached by men, didn't work. The second attempt was in the 4th century, preached by women, then it worked. As for the, so to say, government of the state governing, we had, I'm of course now very much simplifying everything, and it was not as simple as that, but when it comes to state government, we had kings. We had Queen Tamar in 12th century. That was, again, very outstanding for the time action. And as for the clergy, so the church, from the church standpoint, in the historic documents, based on historic documents, we can define two important aspects, so to say, in the history of Georgia when we have women, when we have clear representation of women in the church. Yeah. So first I said Christianity being preached by women, then we have men. Then we have women in 5th century, and that is when you could say this is when the first disobedience towards the rule of patriarchy we can see in the historic documents. Then we have women in 7th century, sorry, and this is in this case, woman is advising to the king. So she's kind of already included in the decision making, but then we have a lot of men as well. So both in state and in church, throughout the history, there were some, so to say, lights to shine from gender equality perspective, but most of them was always in the frames of patriarchy, and classical patriarchy, so to say. So we had last king in the end of 18th century. Then we were part of Russian Empire until for little over a century, until 1918, until the first democratic republic. As for the social order, we never had slavery, but we had some serfdom. So that was kind of social order that could define the differentiation between classes and gender. So where we are now. Now the population of, according to the latest census, the population of Georgia is 3.7 million. 52% of population is women. So we say that majority of our population is women. We have officially, under the official statistics, we have persons with disabilities 3%, but we account more. But in the official statistics, that's how many people registered themselves under the state to receive state benefits. We have number of ethnic belonging groups, and we also have a number of religious denominations. I mean, when it comes to ethnic belongings, Georgians are the majority, and when it comes to religious denominations, 83% of the population associates themselves with Orthodox Christianity. So this is very briefly everything from the beginning of it until now. Now let's very briefly talk about the current human rights and gender equality protection system in the country that was established earlier than adoption of Istanbul, earlier than signing of Istanbul Convention, and has significantly supported the process of ratification of Istanbul Convention. So, as I already have mentioned, I'm advisor to the Prime Minister of Georgia on human rights and gender equality, which means that I am, so to say, directly connected to the Prime Minister's Human Rights Council that has been established in the country since, well, there was unofficially in 2014, but officially since 2016. The Human Rights Interagency Council represents the national monitoring, evaluation, and reporting mechanism that is responsible for the overall coordination of human rights and gender equality in the country. Meaning on day-to-day work, apart from taking high-level political decisions at the ministerial level, to day-to-day work, this is coordination between ministries at the deputy ministerial level and working level, to ensure that different policies and decisions in regards to human rights and gender equality are being implemented. The council is chaired by the Prime Minister and co-chaired by the head of administration and myself, advisor to the Prime Minister on human rights and gender equality. Here you can also see on the slide advisory body. Advisory body was created in 2019, and this is the platform for cooperation with civil society. So advisory body is fully formed by civil society representatives based on their interests. So whoever will express interest to be part of advisory body can join advisory body. On top of that, 12 non-governmental organizations in the country are part of the Human Rights Interagency Council. So they are the members, and they are sitting at the council's meetings alongside the Prime Minister and ministers to discuss and express their opinion on a number of human rights issues depending on what's being discussed at a particular meeting. Human Rights Secretariat serves the Human Rights Interagency Council through technical and expert support. So this is basically people through which the work is done. And when it comes to priorities, so we have, since 2014 in the country, we have National Human Rights Strategy. National Human Rights Strategy also envisions, of course, gender equality. That is translated into National Human Rights Action Plans. We have National Human Rights Action Plan for Human Rights, since 2014. There have been 3 cycles of action plans already adopted and implemented. And gender equality is, so to say, part of the whole document, but 3 chapters are directly related to gender equality. That is chapter 12 on gender equality overall. That is chapter 13 on measures to take in regards to violence against women and domestic violence. Chapter 14 on UN Resolution 1325. And well, actually it's 4 because chapter 15 is covering the SOGI rights and LGBTQI rights. So these are 4 directly related chapters that are in the human rights strategy in the country. On top of that, we have a number of priorities that we say, these are 4 priorities. We say these are our key priorities when it comes to protecting human rights and promoting gender equality in Georgia. Since 2019, priorities can be changed, but for now, since 2019, end of 2019, we have priorities as follows. First, this is gender equality and women's rights. Second, this is children's rights. Third, this is rights of persons with disabilities. And fourth, this is anti-discrimination and equality, promotion of equality on all levels. That includes religious minorities, sexual minorities, ethnic minorities, and etc., and others. So each of these directions have working groups, which means that we regularly meet with civil society representatives, and we regularly meet within the government with representatives from different ministries to push forward this or that policy decision, or to discuss this or that challenge existing. For example, just like example out of top of my head, currently we are working on the document to improve coordination between state bodies to better respond to violence against women and domestic violence. And for example, yesterday we had the meeting of gender response budgeting group that brought together representatives from local municipalities and central government to discuss different aspects of gender responsive budgeting, so GRB. Yeah, so there are many different directions that we work under these 4 key priorities. Also, we have some other priorities. For example, working with youth and through youth is our cross-cutting priority. We, from time to time, based on the need, we form task forces. So, for example, we have task force on business and human rights, and then there could be other needs-based task forces. Through all of that, what we try to achieve? We try to achieve through all of that to protect all the aspects of human rights in the country that concerning civil rights, political, social, economic, cultural rights, and of course, gender equality and non-discrimination are the the main pillars that our work stands on. This being said, we do realize and we regularly revise the challenges that the country faces, because we do realize that we still have a lot to do in all of the directions to better protect human rights and promote gender equality in Georgia. So now let's concentrate on kind of getting closer to Istanbul Convention and getting closer to the situation in regards to gender equality in the country. So we have some good news and some not so good news. And I'm sure you have already had these discussions earlier because there were a number of issues that you have covered through the school about Georgia and gender equality in the country. Good news, at the executive level, we have good representation of women. So 5 out of 11 ministers are women, and we have a number of civil servants. The substantial number of civil servants are also women, and we have more women serving in public sector in comparison to private sector. There is, of course, no discrimination in regards to access to education. There is access to healthcare, and the implementation of UN Resolution 1325 has been as a priority for quite years already. We have a strong gender equality machinery in the country that is at the executive level as well as at the legislative level. We have gender equality councils at both, like Gender Equality Committee that I am chairing at the executive level, and we also have Gender Equality Council at the parliament level, so it's the legislative level. Then we have regional level, so we are cooperating with regional representations, and we have municipal level. Here we have representatives both at the executive and legislative level. So anyways, through this quite complex system, we try to coordinate the gender equality and promote women's rights in the country. I have some of them I have in both good news and bad news as well. For example, political participation is in good news as well, because this year we have adopted gender quota to increase women's participation in the parliament. Unfortunately, for now, it's since the history, it always has been beyond below 14%, which is desires to be more. And here I would like to thank Ms. Lika again for her tireless advocate work for years to ensure that we eventually get quotas, gender quotas in our legislation. However, I put political participation in not so good news as well, because as I've mentioned, the participation so far is quite low. Sexual harassment mechanisms at the public entities. We are currently working on setting sexual harassment response mechanisms at the public entities, and I could tell you more if there is interest, but I can say that the establishment of sexual harassment mechanisms is the result of ratification of Istanbul Convention, but I will talk to that just in a minute, a bit later. In not so good news, we have pay gap, because we still have pay gap, and unfortunately women earn in total, women earn 35% less in Georgia than in comparison to men. We have 18% gap between the labor market participation between men and women. That is also a challenge. So we are actively prioritizing women's economic empowerment now. Well, I mean, I already have mentioned sexual harassment, because we still need to work a lot in this regard. Unfortunately, we don't have access to protecting women's rights in the occupied territories. That is a big challenge currently, especially in regards to latest developments over there in regards to women healthcare, namely in regards to abortions. And we have violence against women and domestic violence on both sides, because while we recognize that a number of important initiatives have been taken in Georgia and have been put in place in Georgia, we still have a lot to do. So we still have a lot of work to do. Now here, I wanted to share experience from your countries about gender equality, but I think I will skip this part and we have it in the discussion, right? Gohar, that's better, right?
I think so, yes. I think it will be better.
Okay, so now you know the history, you know demographic situation in the country, and you know the rights-based situation in the country. Where do we stand? So now we can speak about Istanbul Convention. I will not go into details of what is Istanbul Convention and why this is important. I'm sure you have very well covered that throughout these days, and I have listened to Lado's presentation, and he very rigorously covered this part as well. So in Georgia in 2014 has signed the Istanbul Convention, that since which we kind of, so to say, count the work since when the work has started to ratify the convention 3 years later. So throughout these years, since 2014, the rigorous preparatory work has been conducted by representatives of executive as well as legislative branch, as well as civil society representatives, and of course, public defender's office. The key leading role in the process, we could say, was taken by the Ministry of Justice, and namely the minister herself, because like she was the active proponent of ratification of the Istanbul Convention, and she herself pushed a number of decisions to be made on the way. So here I would say the first important factor when it comes to ratification is having leadership, and having political readiness and having leadership to push the ratification convention further. I don't know if I don't know if it would be possible if she was not like that vocal about it. I mean, we could discuss different scenarios based on your countries, but for Georgia's case, definitely having this clear leadership and readiness from the political level was very important. We also had a very active involvement of Parliament of Georgia, and here we could see yet another a clear example of leadership. It's also worth mentioning that during the preparatory process, a lot of preparatory work was going on between the executive level and legislative level. Yeah, so discussing the details and going through a number of important aspects and addressing all the potential challenges that could have arisen after as a result of the ratification of the convention. So this cooperation between the executive and legislative level was also very important during the preparatory work. Yet another immensely important actor was civil society. And here again, Ms. Lika was actively involved from the civil society standpoint, and also alongside other number of other organizations who, and here I would also like to highlight the importance of civil society in general when it comes to human rights and gender equality. In Georgia, we have quite strong representation of civil society that always is, has a very clear policy agenda and is always advocating for a clear policy agenda in a continuous and sustainable manner. And that helps the process for sure. And that happened in since 2014 until 2017 as well, that civil society was in a way in line with the government in the preparatory work, actively promoting different aspects of Istanbul Convention and actively advocating for Istanbul Convention. And as you know, I mean, always when legislative and executive levels see the active request from the civil society, then the response is also kind of comes as a response. The decision comes as a response to that request as well. So that was an important factor as well. And I guess this is a third aspect of success. And it is also important to highlight the public defender's office's role. And the office undertook very active role in the promotion and preparation of for the ratification. So when I speak preparation, I mean a number of processes in mind. First process, as I have already mentioned, was, if you will, under the closed doors, you know? So discussion between policymakers and discussion between decision makers, ensuring that the ratification will not risk, so to say, will not risk any values in the country either way. The second platform was the cooperation between government and civil society. And the third platform, and the widest and the biggest platform, was cooperation directly with the society. So having a grassroots communication campaign. In the preparatory work, the Ministry of Justice led a grassroots communication campaign that was kind of tried to cover the whole country. And the minister herself would travel to a number of ethnic minority regions, and also different minority regions, and also non-minority regions, but like personally talk to people and explain why ratification of Istanbul Convention will not bring any damage, but will be better for the future of our country and to better protect the future of their children and the future generations. Within the campaign, also a number of social videos have been prepared. I will try to show you one now, or maybe I will send you some later. These are 30 seconds videos. I'll try to open, I'm not sure if you will hear the voice, but that's okay. Can you see the video now?
No.
I will do it right now, sorry. Can you see it now?
Yeah, we can see.
So there is one sentence in Georgian, but you don't have to hear it. If you don't hear it, I'll tell you what it means. Basically, this video and all this was a series of videos stating that let's wait for it. stating that violence against women and domestic violence is not a show and act against it. And then it was bringing some, this was used to initiate the discussion about the importance of Istanbul Convention. And here we can see the title says, Act Istanbul Convention in Georgia. So there were a number of series of such videos used via social media and more importantly, TV channels to harvest the interest from the society and to launch the discussion about the process. I will not show all of them, but the campaign, I would say, was again one of the most important aspects of the success of the ratification. And the last but not least keys to success of the ratification, as told by Minister herself, was to ride the wave. So to use the right moment when all the cards are traded, and when the moment is right, to just use the right moment of the political situation and social situation in the country and ratify the convention. It's also worth noting that within those period of time, based on my observation, and please correct me if I'm wrong, in Georgia, we did not have a strong anti-convention movement. So it was not established as a strong anti-convention movement in 2017 when it was ratified. So, and I think globally also within the last 3 years, the movement is getting stronger and stronger. But I'm not sure if you would agree, and I would like to hear your opinion about that. In 2017, the anti-convention movement was not that strong in globally either. So maybe that could be yet another aspect to take into account when talking about the ratification process. So very briefly, this was the ratification, this was the preparatory work that brought us to the vote in May 2017. And as the Parliament started to discuss the convention, ratification of the convention in an 85-0 votes, the Parliament of Georgia has ratified the Istanbul Convention on May 5, 2017, and it has entered into force on September 1st, 2017. Prior and after of the ratification of the convention, number of legal amendments have been prepared in the country to better harmonize Georgian legislation to the requirements of Istanbul Convention and international legislation, through which we had number of crimes criminalized in Georgia that were not being part of criminal law before. That was stalking, forced sterilization, forced abortion, FGM, sexual harassment, child marriages, meaning the age was introduced. There were all the exceptions removed from the law when it comes to marriage until 18. So now only marriage until after 18 is legally permitted in the country. Also as a result of Istanbul Convention ratification, and again before, because the process of improving legislation and social aspects started before as well. And this made it easier to ratify the convention. I will give you the example of, I will get back to this slide. I will give you the example of shelters, for example. So because shelters in the country, the system of shelters and system of crisis centers was introduced a bit earlier than the ratification of the convention, that made it easier to ratify the convention, because this big, how to say, step was already taken. So it was like less requirements from the convention. So since 2015 in the country, we have the system of violence against women and domestic violence shelters. Well, actually it's domestic violence shelters because men can, and sexual minorities can go there as well. And the crisis centers. So currently we have the state-run 5 shelters and 5 crisis centers throughout the country. And also we have 2 additional non-governmental organizations, civil society organizations run shelters in the country as well. We also have hotlines. That is, I mean, of course, 112 is an emergency hotline, but we also have hotlines specifically for the domestic violence consultations and legal consultations and psychological consultations. That's 116006, and public defenders hotline 1481. As a result of Istanbul Convention, again, one of the results of Istanbul Convention was that through the improved framework, we also have improved the response to violence against women and domestic violence. That simplified the issuing of restraining orders. That throughout the years, we have seen a drastic increase in the number of restraining orders, but also we see the decrease in the violation of restraining orders. So a number of issued restraining orders goes up, but the violation of restraining orders go down. In order to ensure that, so last year, if I'm not mistaken, we had 3% violation, but in order to ensure that there is even less violation and actually prevent the violation from happening, and also prevent, in some cases, unfortunate tragic results of such violations, in 2020, Georgia has also introduced electronic bracelet monitoring system as well, that's being used in cases of high-risk offenders. We also, the Ministry of Internal Affairs has also set risk assessment system for the domestic violence, and there are a number of, I will not go into details, but there are a number of tools supporting victims and survivors. For example, we have victims and witnesses advocates at the Ministry of Justice and Prosecutor's Office, and a number of other institutions. So, as Lado mentioned yesterday, this year we have prepared the first ever Grevio report that will be revised by the Grevio committee this year and until the 2022. So the revision, the mission is expected to arrive in Georgia in fall of 2020. That will be kind of followed by the rigorous process of evaluation. So we are like the 3 years, right now we are on the mark of 3 years of Istanbul Convention ratification, and after 3 years we already have the first Grevio report ready. I will very briefly touch the situation during COVID, and then maybe we could move to discussion and discuss the rest of the details within the discussion, because I want to have some substantial time left for the discussion. But here I would very briefly would like to mention that despite the COVID-19, as a continuation of strengthening of the framework system and implementation system, I mean, of course, all of that was jeopardized during the COVID-19 global pandemic, and everything was put under the risk. And because the crisis was so unexpected, we, not many people knew what to do, so to say, in regards to number of human rights, and also including violence, prevention and combating violence against women and domestic violence. So what we did, like as the very first thing we could managed to organize to do, was to develop a communication strategy on violence against women and domestic violence during the COVID-19 crisis, because we have foreseen that reporting the violence would be the most difficult when it comes to experiencing violence and in times of pandemics, yeah, because like still, even though in Georgia we didn't have the full lockdown and people could still go out, we had curfew hours. We still have curfew hours now, but during the day, people still can go out of house. Still, it was important to ensure that people have alternative ways of reporting violence, such as 112 mobile application, and such as number of other chat boxes, and number of other, we also have a mobile application has SOS button, so you could call and push the button without calling and the police will arrive, and number of other alternative reporting mechanisms. So we ensured that people have access to this information through the communication campaign that was run by in coordinated manner by the state institutions. Here you can see the posters that we put in grocery shops and pharmacies, because we saw that grocery shops and pharmacies are the most, so to say, visited places during the pandemic. And on the very left here, you could see the information brochure that was put in the hotels where citizens of Georgia were arriving from abroad during the crisis. I mean, as you know, over 15,000 citizens came back to the country as a result of the crisis. So it was very important to ensure that if the survivors of domestic violence who had to escape the country because of the violence had to come back, they had information at the very first point, so to say, first point of contact when they arrived to the country and go to quarantine. So this was yet another measure taken into account. I mean, we also had put a number of policy decisions in place during COVID-19, but because COVID-19 is not the discussion of our today's topic, I will stop here and we can discuss more if there are questions. So to conclude and to summarize, as Marta mentioned, we do have quite interesting and sometimes challenging social structure of the society, but first of all, we can say that even though there are many stereotypes, and I think that one of the biggest challenges that we currently face is combating stereotypes against equality and against gender equality as well. Regardless of that, back in the beginning of 20th century, we saw the values of equality. And what we can say is that regardless of all of this kind of like put on layers of stereotypes, we can still try to keep those values of equality and bring them into practical implementation. Yeah, so there's like the very beautifully written words in the Constitution, like now the challenge is how to make sure that they are actually implemented in the daily life. And that's basically what does not keep me sleep at night. And that's the work of that's a challenge of our daily work. However, regardless of everything, I can say that despite COVID-19, building on the very strong foundation of Istanbul Convention, the government of Georgia remains committed to combating violence against women and domestic violence in all kinds of spaces and all kinds of circumstances, and does realize this as the key priority for the well-being of our country in the future. Okay, I think I spoke a lot, but I will stop here and would like to hear opinions, ideas, thoughts, critical questions are most welcome, and I'll try to reply them in Russian and in English as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lela. It was very interesting, very informative. And now we can have questions or comments or just continue discussing. Please, who wants to address any comment, question? We have half an hour. No? I have one question, Lela. Thank you again. It was very, very interesting. My question is about gender responsive budgeting and how does it, you mentioned it at the beginning. So it's interesting if it was taken into account when in the process of implementation or post-implementation. So I don't know, how does it work when it comes to, for example, the Istanbul Convention or for any other convention? Is it a special group that do these calculations, or I don't know, just can you talk a little bit more about the process of GRB and the implementation of any convention pretty much, but in this case about the Istanbul Convention, if there is a practice as such?
Gohar, I think there was a problem of connection. So did you ask how are we establishing GRB in regards to Istanbul Convention?
Any convention, but also like how is it taken into account from the very beginning, how this will be I don't know, all these calculations, shelters that should be provided, everything in regards to the convention when it's implemented, how GRB is linked to this, basically.
Thank you very much. That's a very good question. And GRB is still among in 2012, we have introduced the methodology that's called program budgeting. I'm sure you're all aware of that changes the people who work on the budget at central level and at the local level. Are you familiar with the concept? Oh, I will just very briefly mention. So before, we could say that Ministry of Finance, only the finance people would work on the budget project, for projects of the budget at the municipal level and the central level as well. And I will be mentioning, when we speak about GRB, it's immensely important to mention municipal level as well, so the local level, because a number of very important programs or projects would it be in regards to, I don't know, transportation or roads or anything is being decided and done at the local level. So having their buy-in when it comes to GRB is very important. So when it comes to program budgeting, what has changed is that if before only the finance people would work on the project of the budget, now the system requires program people to talk to finance people to kind of exchange information and ensure that program aspects are being reflected in the budget. So budget is being drafted based on the program, not based on the numbers. This is the idea. And we see GRB as part of this process. When the program budget is being drafted, there is annex that presents gender responsive budgeting and what could be done at the local and central levels to have the appropriate budget. However, we are still very actively working on the capacity building in that regard. And we do that with the very great support and great help of international and national partners who sometimes directly work with municipalities and who sometimes through the central government work with municipalities. Now, when it comes to Istanbul Convention, and you have mentioned, for example, the financing of shelters, etc. Financing of shelters goes through, I was saying that before we would not put that it's a part of GRB annex. I don't know why. Maybe we should consider that. But so far, I mean, when the shelters have been established, they were initially financed. Pilot was financed by partner organization, namely UN Women, and then it became part of central budget. So now all the regional shelters are being financed from the region, from the central budget. What we like. GRB process is still not universal, so not all the municipalities and not all the ministries do that, but we have some positive examples as well. For example, the parliament, the upcoming budget of the parliament will have GRB annex, and the number of programs in number of ministries, would it be Ministry of Internal Affairs, Ministry of Education, or other ministries, have been reviewed based on GRB principles, and GRB principles have been introduced. And the same we could say about the municipal level. So we are in this like middle stage, you know, like limbo stage, where we're not there yet and we're trying to get there yet, and we are improving our capacity, but again, so yeah, that's where we are. What is GRB experience in other countries? That's very interesting.
Well, in Armenia, we're just starting this process. Now there are a lot of, again, it's UN women, and I guess it's mainly UN women that is pushing this. And I think it was taken into account when developing crisis centers for the survivors linked to the domestic violence law. And I know that there is, it's basically left to the head of the certain committee to decide whether it's not obligatory yet, unfortunately. So it's, for example, the head of anti-corruption committee is a woman with gender perspective. She has this sensitivity, so she is willing to incorporate that. But I don't see a lot of other committees or ministries doing that, unfortunately. So now it should be really it should become something on a state level and municipality level, an obligatory tool. So state representatives can use it and understand the value. You know, basically it's up to the certain position to decide whether they want to have it or not. That's this. But now there is a capacity building component from the UN Women online workshops that open for civil society and the government, so you can join and learn. I guess it's the process. I mean, it's probably something will happen. I don't know. I hope.
Yeah, maybe anybody would also like to share, but I will say very brief comment that you're absolutely right. And I will be very honest right now and say that there was time when I didn't believe in GRB myself, like that. I just didn't understand the benefit of it, you know, like it seemed artificial to me. And until I was able to see this process as a one holistic project and budgeting process, until then, I was not a supporter of it myself, I should admit so, but like now I see the vital added value to the instrument itself, you know. Marta, how is it over there?
В Украине уже достаточно долгий период времени гендерное бюджетирование вводится как элемент планирования и мониторинга. И мне нравится, что это делается системно, разными, при поддержке разных доноров. Это и шведы были, и канадская СИДА. И, ну, то есть, и они делают и государственный уровень, и областные бюджеты. И очень хорошо, что именно готовятся финансисты. Не только гендерные экспертки, но и финансисты. И я думаю, что это будет переход количественных изменений в качественные. Мы уже видим отчеты, анализ бюджетов, анализ направлений, анализ больших частей бюджетов, там доходной или расходной части. То есть, ну, это довольно интересно. Много идет программ по подготовке тренеров по этому направлению. Это уже больше 5 лет вот такой процесс происходит. Это, я думаю, что перейдет в качественные изменения. И если можно, Лейла, мне очень интересно, большое спасибо за ваш доклад. И для меня очень такой важный момент был в вашем докладе о том, что вы говорили, что равенство есть ценность, что вы активизировали вот эту, ну, как бы рамку или эту парадигму, что для населения, для народа человеческое такое качество, ценность — это уважение к равенству. И я думаю, что это очень важный такой момент, о котором нужно говорить. И если у вас... Спасибо большое за то, что вы на это обратили внимание, потому что это, по-моему, это действительно одно из ключевых таких опорных моментов, на которые мы можем опираться в выстроении наших адвокаси-компаний. И я хотела спросить о том, были ли какие-то специфические, не знаю, информационные кампании или коммуникационные какие-то подходы, которые как раз активизировали вот это человеческое интенцию такую к равенству больших групп людей, потому что я верю, что это ну, в таком гуманизме, в базовых таких ценностях людей, это уважение к равенству других людей есть. И как нам вот это поднять до уровня, что я готова уже это защищать, за это выходить, за это выступать, выстроить эту коммуникацию к апелляции к этим ценностям. Спасибо большое.
Спасибо большое за то, что вы поделились своим опытом насчет GRP, и также огромное спасибо за вопрос. Maybe I'll switch to, I will be jumping from English to Russian, if that's okay. Sometimes I say in English. Да, это очень важно, чтобы вот to speak about equality as a value, and I think this is what we found to be the most important aspect of human rights protection in the country as well. Like when we speak about human rights, yeah, like we have very beautiful strategy, like, and now we will have the second national strategy on human rights for 2014-2030. But like when I myself sit and read the strategy, it's very beautiful, but like how can my husband or my neighbor or anybody else realize it in their life? Like what does it say for them, you know? And that's how we got to this, like equality is the most important, so to say, aspect in current life and current modern reality. But I mean, of course, we were not the first ones who got to that conclusion, and that was again being done by policymakers and politicians much earlier. But as for promoting it, I would say we are in the process. So the process is still going on. One of the most I would say very important aspect that makes my job very easy, much easier, is the involvement of the Prime Minister himself. Like the Prime Minister as being the highest political person, one of the highest political persons, he himself very often speaks about, he himself very often connects political aspects to the equality. So he says, this is being done so that we ensure equality for all the people in our country. And then this is being done so that we ensure equality for all the people in our country. And then we also have hashtags. It's equal opportunities, equal future. So it's like, if we create equal opportunities, we'll create equal future. And we use it on everything, not only in gender equality, but for example, in Georgia, we have challenges with ethnic minorities and equality ethnic minorities and with religious minorities. And I'm not even speaking about sexual minorities because there we have a lot of work to do. But so that's what we are trying to promote. But also what was a lesson learned so far is that like one-time campaigns does not help and does not serve the purpose, so to say. I mean, of course, right now we are in the process of preparation for the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And this is a campaign, but I'm not saying anything bad about campaigns. This is very important. And all the state entities will be very actively involved in the campaign since next week. But it's very important that campaign does not end on December the 10th, you know, like it's very important that we continue delivering these messages beyond December, and not only in March, but in April and May and June and July as well. So I think that's yet another important lesson learned that we have learned from our experience, that continuously delivering the message of equality through different aspects is very important. And I mean, political leadership does change a lot. Like my position is, so to say, very interesting because I can find myself this most marginalized and most rural areas in the country and go and visit them. And I know for sure that government cameramen and government video men will follow me, and then we will see it in news, you know, and that having this type of visibility is very important. And I think that also contributes to the process. But at the end of the day, we are still in the process. We have a lot to do. We have a lot to be done. So if you learn anything on the way, please do share with us as well. Потому что мы все еще пытаемся пока что мы не там, но ничего, это процесс, это долгий процесс. Но on the positive side, and very briefly I will mention, on the positive side, the UN agencies have been conducting this, public opinion attitude surveys within the years. So in 2019, we got results from the survey from 2019, but we also had the same questions asked to Georgian people in 5 years earlier, well, 6 years earlier, 5.5. So within these 5 years, we have significant change. We see significant change in social attitudes. That is like really makes me happy, you know, because especially so the very important part was that within this change, we saw biggest change in women and biggest change in youth. So there you go, you have it, two biggest groups to the most kind of like, but so yeah, the attitudes of women have changed drastically towards their role in the family, towards their role in the society, towards their involvement in politics, involvement in business, doing business, everything. So we see like when attitude of men also change, like if before, let's say, well, now let's say 60% of the population in Georgia thinks that politics would be better if there are more women in it. And more and more men think that women are good managers, etc., etc. But still, like when we compare, like change in women's opinion is like 3 times higher than men, and then in youth as well. Like we see big age difference that like youth, and I guess that's yet another important aspect when it comes to establishing equality as a value, that youth can make that happen, I think. And again, especially in regards to as such still stereotyped opinion as LGBTQI. Like I often have meetings with youth and talk to them about this issue, and they are even afraid to ask a question sometimes, you know. So, but it's very important that we have this discussion with youth and we have these conversations with them, and because they are really the drivers of the change, without sounding like superficial or so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lela. We have 10 more minutes if someone else wants to share their feedback or just to ask a question to Lela, please.
I see Valentina's hand is raised.
Yes, Valentina. Yeah, thank you. Please, Valentina.
Thank you very much, but I don't see the translation. I'd like to ask you in Russia if it's possible, no?
Yeah.
Okay, it's directly, yeah. Во-первых, спасибо большое за презентацию, очень интересная такая полноценная, разносторонняя презентация. Вы знаете, я вот смотрела на описание вашего Human Rights Council, и все-таки для меня остается много вопросов. Если все-таки в Грузии удалось наладить, будем говорить так, эффективную работу этого Human Rights Council. Почему я спрашиваю? Потому что у нас в Молдове тоже пошли по идее создания Human Rights Council, но, к сожалению, мы потеряли национальный механизм по гендерному равенству. Потому что, создав Human Rights Council, отменили все остальные комиссии. У нас была комиссия по гендерному равенству, комиссия по правам людей с ограниченными возможностями, комиссия по народонаселению, много комиссий было, по правам ребенка и так далее. И у нас все сказали, все объединяем в этот Human Rights Council. И в итоге мы потеряли эти комиссии. Ну, Human Rights Council, он как бы собирается, но вот эти рабочие группы, все, изменился вообще полностью концепт. А самое главное, изменилась функциональность. Вот мы этот вопрос еще поставили на SIDU Committee. Спасибо коллегам, что поддержали наше видение. Да. Вот меня интересует в Грузии, как вы справились с этой провокацией, с этим вызовом. Спасибо.
Спасибо. Если можно, я один вопрос задам. Вот эти комиссии на каком уровне существовали? И на каком уровне сейчас существует Human Rights Council?
Ой, там очень сложно с Human Rights Council, а с комиссиями я вам скажу. Комиссии у нас были на уровне, главой комиссии был на уровне либо вице-премьер-министра, как правило, на уровне вице-премьер-министра, по социальным вопросам, как правило. Но секретариат держала, согласно закону номер 5 о гендерном равенстве, Министерство труда и социальной защиты. Ну, сейчас немножко трансформировалось. И вот самая большая провокация была, что там всегда говорили, хотя в эту комиссию входили все министерства на уровне замминистров или государственных секретарей, сейчас другая форма, и плюс НПО входили, и патронат, и синдикаты, trade unions входили. То есть, в принципе, это была платформа для диалога, но рекомендации комиссии, конечно, на том уровне, которые были, они были рекомендательными. То есть это рекомендательное было все. Но мы рассматривали все отчеты СИДО на заседаниях этих комиссий, дальше они шли уже по нарастанию. Мы рассматривали очень много документов. Это был как бы и такой консультативный рекомендательный орган. Сегодня вообще ничего нет. И нам говорят, нет, вот есть как бы там рабочие какие-то субгруппы, то, что с моей точки зрения крайне нефункционально. Потому что одно дело, когда там где-то между собойчик собирается civil society, это одно, а там, где у нас была возможность, платформа, работать вместе, и государственные структуры, и гражданское общество, и другие структуры, это совершенно другой социальный импакт.
Да, понятно. Спасибо за вопрос. Очень
Причем
интересно.
нам очень часто иногда, хотя я делаю алаверды, как говорят, да, нам говорят, вот посмотрите, в Грузии есть Human Rights Council. Я говорю, да, но Грузия пошла еще и по нашему пути, она сохранила комиссию по гендерному равенству. И у нас есть министерство Gender Focal Point, но чаще всего не работают, потому что вот та комиссия, она была как раз платформа, где Gender Focal Point могли готовить справки, они готовили информацию и так далее. А сейчас это, в общем, ну, как бы вот в воздухе. Я считаю, это моя точка зрения как эксперта, это иногда очень выгодно некоторым правительствам, правительственным структурам. Потому что наши что сказали? Говорят, вот у нас есть рекомендация международных экспертов, вот с ними разбирайтесь. Мы все полномочия отдали Human Rights. И тогда, получается, там никто ни за что не отвечает, понимаете? Вот это самое страшное. Спасибо.
Да. Спасибо большое, очень интересные вопросы, и как бы процесс, я думаю, все время идет, потому что я не знаю насчет у вас, но у нас это все еще новое. С 2016 году был создан Council, так что ну, пока что мы все еще учимся, да? И so I brought back the structure, and I would like to very briefly mention the changes that we have implemented within the last year in the end of 2019. So in our case, it was a bit different. It was a bit vice versa. First, what we did, you are absolutely right, we did not abolish any committees that have been established before. We have gender equality committees still functioning, and we have child rights committees that was already established, so still functioning, did not change that. So as I mentioned, the Human Rights Council was established in 2016, but we observed the process and we tried to improve the process step by step. So what were the changes? This one of these observations happened in the end of 2019. Let me very briefly tell you about the changes of the structure, and then maybe we can discuss what could have been done better. Yeah. So before 2019, we had Human Rights Council, and then we had assistant to the Prime Minister on gender equality and human rights. Yeah, so Human Rights Council was run by Human Rights Secretariat, and this was separate. And then assistant to the Prime Minister was responsible for gender equality, and this was separate. So for years, this is how it functioned. However, what we saw was that there was need for the greater cooperation and coordination, and there were many overlaps between human rights and gender equality. So what the Human Rights Secretariat did and what the assistant to the Prime Minister on gender equality did. So when I was being appointed, what we did was that we have leveled up the position. So from the assistant to Prime Minister, it became advisor to the Prime Minister. That gave bigger representation, and this is a political position, so that gave higher representation. And we also brought back together the whole system. So it's not divided in two, but it's together now. That could have seen as a risk based on what you were saying. But to avoid that risk, what we did was that we didn't abolish any existing committees. We assigned levels to all the committees, and we increased the participation of civil society organizations. I think this is immensely important in all kinds of work to have civil society sitting at the table, no matter what you do. So from on the top in the Human Rights Interagency Council, before we had 6 NGOs as members, and we doubled that. So now we have 12. And as I already mentioned, we have created this advisory body in which now we have over 70 NGOs, and all of them participated in the creation of new human rights strategy. We also established 2 more commissions, And yes, now all of it is under Human Rights Council, but the decision-making levels are different. So Human Rights Council was always and is still the ministerial level, but Gender Equality Council was always deputy ministerial level. And that's how it is. And that's like the logic, you know, because like you discuss these, so to say, the most important policy decisions at the human rights level, but then you implement it through the councils and through the commissions. And for us in our reality, it would be absolutely impossible to have that many human rights councils meetings with the involvement of ministers. And I think not needed that we have with, for example, gender equality, because we have 9 working groups in the Gender Equality Commission, and these like working groups at the working level, as well as with the involvement of deputy ministers, meet quite often, like I would say monthly on different subjects. So the process is quite rigorous, you know, like we have completed CEDAW report now, and we done that through the Gender Equality Committee. We have completed Grevio report, and that's also been done through. So the levels are different. I don't know, maybe that's what contributed of not abolishing it, but and then for each commission, we also have thematic working groups, thematic advisory groups. And what we also are trying to do is that currently under the legal statute of Gender Equality Commission, we don't have civil society organizations as mandatory members. Right now, we are working on establishing the CRPD Commission, so National Coordination Commission for the Implementation of Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And in that commission, we already ensured that we have civil society sitting at the table. So that like when we have new commission created, we ensure that civil society is part of the membership from the beginning. And I mean, I can foresee that right now, like all the invitations to the Gender Equality Commission meeting goes to wide range of non-governmental organizations. So we invite them regardless that they are, so to say, regardless that we're not obliged to, but in the future, maybe we foresee to putting that in writing as well through the legal statute. So I think this is this mix of practice and legal changes that we have implemented within the last year. That's where we are. But I do see your concern, and when I was being appointed, the discussion also took place: should it be human rights advisor that includes gender equality, or should we have human rights and gender equality? And then we left human rights and gender equality, highlighting the importance of both. So there is a risk for such mixtures to happen, but I think this like very clear structure and very different levels of work might help. Does it answer your question? Ответила на ваш вопрос или?
Да, да.
Да.
Это больше для рефлексии опыта. Работы много.
Да, работы много. И я честно не представляю, как можно министра включать в такую работу, тот левел, который мы работаем, да, потому что это constant consultations, все время консультации, все время встречи, все время это топик, тот топик. Поэтому я думаю, что вот этот другие разные платформы для координации, также для работы с НГО очень важны. Да, так что, если кто-нибудь спросит о примере из Грузии, вот это пример из Грузии.
Нет, но мы прекрасно должны понимать, что кто такие министры? Это люди политической воли. Сегодня есть, завтра их нет, к сожалению. Когда уходят министры, мы теряем иногда институциональную память, если мы не думаем об этом. Вот это самое страшное. То есть мы должны вы правы, мы должны на всех уровнях продумывать эти вещи. Спасибо.
Спасибо большое. Уже 2 часа, у нас перерыв сейчас на полчаса, но у нас есть еще один вопрос от Анастасии. Я не знаю, Лела, если вы можете просто очень коротко также ответить на вопрос Анастасии в чате у нас, и мы прервемся на небольшой брейк и придем в 2:30, да, обратно. Ну, то есть это у меня 2:30, у вас...
12, через полчаса.
Через полчаса. Значит, вопрос следующий. Dear Lela, thank you for your useful presentation. I have one question. Does your country has national or international mechanisms to protect the Istanbul Convention? I see how situation in Poland becomes worse with women's rights. Maybe you will have time later to answer.
That's a very good question. to protect Istanbul Convention? Meaning, like, I'm trying to imagine a situation if we're taking a step back, for example?
Yeah, for example, or some, there may be some legislation that contradicts, for example, and then you have to fight again for. We see many examples especially in Eastern Europe now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good question. I think this clause in Constitution guaranteeing equality and obligating the state to take special measures to ensure equal opportunities for men and women could be considered as a protection for Istanbul Convention or for protection for the gender equality as such. Because like me as a government representative, I am myself very often reminded of that equality clause by civil society organizations, and not only. So I would see that as the biggest protection mechanism when it comes to protecting equality in the country. But of course, we are part of the region, and whatever happens in the region in regards to human rights and gender equality does reflect on us as well. And so far government continues to have it on a very high priority, and I think that plays a key role. And again, the very strong civil society organizations also contribute to the process of чтобы не расслабляться, да? So not to staying always in focus and continuing to work. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Lela. Thank you for your time, for your presentation, and we'll have some break, and then we have presentations of Valentina and it will be Valentina and Veronica talking about women's organization, ensuring women's rights and confronting